a point-and-click stealth adventure. The player must disarm traps and reach the chests, which open the prison gates without being detected. 80 stages set in a dark medieval dungeon atmosphere teeming with monsters. Welcome to episode 54 of the 5 T's of Stealth, where we will be discussing Tommy and the monster prison. Once again, the 5 T's include tasks, terrain, tools, threats, and tension. These are what I consider to be the fundamentals of stealth gaming. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room. The Steam page states that there are 80 levels in this game. However, I have completed the game and there are only 40. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but it's not exactly a big deal. Although I will say I was a little disappointed after realizing the game was only half as long as promised. Moving on, there's not much of a story going on here. Basically, you play as Tommy and his goal is to free captives of the monster prison and escape. So how does that translate to the actual mission design? Well, your objective in every single level is just to unlock the exit and proceed through it. Some levels will have prisoners that you will free, but that feels like it gets completed naturally by progressing through the level. In each level, you can earn 3 stars. To do so, you must find all the coins on the map and open all the chests. You get 1 star for all the coins, 1 star for opening the chests that contain potions which will eliminate some enemies, and 1 star for opening the chest that has the key for the exit. Some levels will actually have 2 chests next to each other and you can only select one. This double chest decision isn't super important and seems to only impact which monsters get taken out. Naturally, in some missions, eliminating some monsters will be much more important than eliminating others, but the chests seem to be the same every time, so if you have to restart the level, you'll know which is which. As I mentioned, there are 40 missions, but I should also say that these are divided into 4 different sections. Aside from just finding the exit in each level, there are 5 total boss fights, each of which occur at the end of a section. I am very aware that I just mentioned there only being 4 sections, but 5 boss fights. This is because levels 39 and 40 are actually both boss fights, with 40 being the final boss. So as I mentioned, there are 4 different sections in this game. The 4 sections are the Prison of Souls, External Area, the Prison of Monsters, and Exit. I'm not sure these are all great names for locales, but we will roll with it. Each locale definitely feels unique with a different style as well as different traps and monsters. For starters, I want to say there's a lot of occurrences where I got stuck on a corner or end up running on a wall when I just really don't feel like I should be. I pretty much just chalk this up to some top-down perspective issues. One of the main mechanics throughout this game is connected to these pillars with a flame on top. These flame pillars are connected to laser walls that block an area or hold captives in a cell. Throughout the game, there will be many of these flame pillars that you must extinguish to open up pathways. This sounds more complicated than it really is, since all you have to do is run into the pillar. There are several other basic mechanics, such as broken walls which allow for new paths or line of sight for the monsters, ladders which are connected to one another and move you from one point to another on the map, and simple bridges connecting one area to another. I believe they mostly occurred in the second section, but there are several areas that are full of water. Somewhere else on the map, there will be a lever that drains that water and typically reveals a ladder. There are also several ice floors in this game, which I believe first appear in the 3rd section. These ice floors prevent you from altering your movement at all, or in other words, you can only move straight across an ice floor. In order to disable this trap or melt the ice, there are dice somewhere on the map in the ground. You must walk over these dice starting at 1 and ending with 4. Later in the game, you will also come across flame traps on the floor. In order to traverse these areas, you must walk up to certain statues which will cover you in water, preventing the flames from hurting you. There are also spike traps in many of the levels, some of which will regularly extend and retract their spikes. Tommy really doesn't have a lot of options as he makes his way through the monster prison. There is a dragonfly woman who will offer you 3 upgrades. You can get these red boots, which increase your move speed temporarily and will recharge when you stop moving. There is a red cloak, which grants extra protection and allows you to take an extra hit. Lastly, there is simply an extra life. I should start by saying in this game, you immediately lose if you take any damage or walk into a vision cone. So, the extra protection, or extra life, allow you to keep going. I will say I am a little confused about the 2 of them because as far as I can tell, they do the same thing. They just allow you to get hit an extra time. Perhaps this is just me not noticing the difference because I only had either of them once or twice since they go away once used. When I first had the decision to make, I chose the upgrade to movement speed, and I didn't know it at the time, but that's easily the best upgrade, simply for the fact that you do not lose your boots. I thought maybe with the extra protection it would reset at the beginning of each level, but no. Once you get hit while wearing it, you can tell it goodbye. From what I remember, the Dragonfly Woman only appears 3 times throughout the game. Once within the first couple of missions, then a couple more times later in the game on certain missions in a very specific area designed for her. On some missions, or maybe every mission and I just didn't find it every time, there is a hidden extra heart. This is a point and click game. Not in the sense that you click in one spot and the character runs over there, but in the sense that you will click and drag your mouse around and Tommy will follow. I don't love this, and honestly think the game would have been much better with actual movement controls. With this point and click method, I never really felt like I had full control, and I had to hope it was lined up well. Because of this, general movement is solid, even with no sprint, jump, or crouch mechanics. But again, I just wish I could have used WASD or plugged in a controller. For some reason, during boss fights, the controls feel a lot worse too. I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but it's almost like the controls are stickier or more restricted. In other words, I don't feel as if I can move my mouse as freely and have to move in short bursts. In my opinion, this is the most interesting part of the game. There are quite a few different monsters, all requiring you to learn their patterns. Everything, or mostly everything, I will talk about in this section can be eliminated by the chest potions. I'm not sure if they have specific names, but if they do, I don't know them. The first monster is a one-eyed ball. These monsters simply have a vision cone and will pan over an area. Next, there are these demon heads attached to walls in pairs. They will form a laser between them, temporarily blocking an area. There are typically several of these pairs, requiring you to perfect the timing to move between them. Next, there is a monster that will walk back and forth while continually firing a laser in one direction. I'm not quite sure how to describe the next monster, but they are rather small, and from what I can remember, only appear in water areas. These monsters will leap into the air, and when they land, a circle will extend from their location in all directions. You cannot get hit by this AoE attack or walk into them when they're simply floating in the water. In this same area, there's this blue flame on the head of a monster that shoots multiple lasers, with one point at the flame and the other moving 360 degrees around the duo. Next, there are these living stone walls that again are paired up and will smash into one another and squish you if you are in between. You also can't touch them when they are slowly walking backwards to reset. Next, there are a couple skeleton enemies. The first Skelly does not move and stands next to 4 flames that are in the 4 corners of a specific tile. Walking into these tiles on the floor or into the skeleton itself will reset you. The next Skelly will walk around the level in the middle of the 4 blue flames mentioned earlier that are in the 4 corners surrounding it. Continuing on, there are these almost statue-esque heads that are in pairs, similar to the demon head lasers from earlier. These head statues will shoot these green flames back and forth, but are not in a straight line. There are also some green flames that appear to be hiding in the walls and other pillars and will move towards you when you get too close. The last enemy to discuss before the bosses are probably the one that killed me the most, and what I refer to as Golem Gunmen. These are basically stationary golems that are completely locked onto you at all times and will fire a 3-round burst of stones when you get too close. Seriously, these guys got me quite a bit, especially compared to everything else. Of course, when there are several in one area, it was extra dangerous. Alright, let's jump into the 5 bosses. The first thing I want to mention is how you damage the bosses, because it is the same for all of them. During each boss fight, these little potions will fall around the map, and all you have to do is run into them, which will launch them at the boss. You must be quick, as these potions will despawn after a time. Rinse and repeat until they are donezo. The first boss, the Tentacle. This boss would drop bombs over an area that you must dodge, and once hit, would go underwater and chase after you. As the fight progresses, the Tentacle would spawn more and more bombs. There were even times where the bombs would spawn right next to me, and I'd end up dead. The second boss, the Barrier. This boss had 4 green flames atop the 4 corners of this structure. These 4 flames, which might actually be flaming skulls, would each launch a bunch of smaller flames that would cover the map. Some would move individually and spread out, while others would form a circle and directly pursue you. The third boss, which I have no idea how to pronounce, Hilti Energy? This boss was in the middle of the map, which had a barrier of the flaming skulls. Outside of this barrier were 4 statues of the boss, which would occasionally launch some green flames in your direction. The boss would disappear after being hit, and when it reappears, it would have 4 flame walls in each direction, one up, one down, and one to each side. These walls would have a gap between them for you to run through. At the same time, the boss is dropping bombs. As the fight progresses, the boss will begin to spin the walls of flame in a circle. I should also mention that I somehow bugged the hell out of this boss and had to reset my game to actually fight it properly. The 4th boss, Slugbot. In the Slugbot arena, there are spike traps scattered all over the map. There are 2 solid walls of spikes which prevent you from moving too far away. This boss will simply chase after you and routinely drop a little green bomb that would spread flames towards either side of it. The tricky part in this fight is not necessarily dodging Slugbot, but learning the pattern of when the spike traps retract so you know which area is safe. This will prevent you from backing yourself into a corner and getting stomped on or burned. The final boss, Hill T. Much like the 3rd boss, this fight takes place within a dangerous barrier. However, this barrier is made up of spike traps which will periodically retract, allowing you to move throughout the entire map. Just be careful not to get stuck in a bad spot. If you couldn't tell by the names, this boss looks the same as the 3rd. I have interpreted that to mean this is the true form of the 3rd boss, and the existence of the word energy for the 3rd boss's name implies it's just part of this guy's power. So the boss has a circle of flaming skulls around it and will move between each corner of the map within the spike barrier. This seems to be tied to taking damage, but could also be on a timer. I'm not exactly sure. During this time, the boss will spawn a flame wall starting from the left and moving to the right, or vice versa. After the boss has moved to each corner, it will move into the darkness off the map, but is still visible. At this time, it will begin to spawn a second green wall of flames coming from the opposite direction. You now have to deal with flames moving from the left and moving from the right, and find the gap within each. Tommy in the Monster Prison can be pretty tense, and it requires you to really learn the bestiary present throughout the game. If you don't know what attacks these monsters will use, then you won't know how to dodge them. Once again, I'd like to mention Section 3 and the Golem Gunmen. As I mentioned earlier, these guys caused more restarts than anyone. The short delay before they fire is excruciating. I would plan my route just knowing that I had no idea when these guys would actually fire. It made dodging their burst all the more difficult. I especially loved when there were several other threats involved and the Golem Gunman just watching you, waiting for its chance to strike. Of course, there are also a handful of traps to learn, but those are much more straightforward. Overall, it can be pretty tense, especially during the boss fights. I will say, however, a big part of the boss fight tension is that feeling of no control over your character and just praying you'll be able to move the way you want. That's not to say the bosses are super easy or complete pushovers, it's just to say they wouldn't be as difficult if I could trust my movement. There's one mechanic in this game that I haven't mentioned yet, and it actually kinda bugs me. When you activate a switch, open a chest, deactivate a barrier, etc., the game would freeze and zoom in on the change happening. This is fine for the most part, except when you factor in the game unfreezing and you dying right after. This didn't happen a ton where I would actually die, but later in the game, this definitely put me on edge every time the game froze. I was scared for sure. Again, not a huge deal, but a bit of an annoyance. I mean, the game would literally show you how you're progressing, and then you'd have to restart and do it again. There's one last thing that I absolutely have to talk about. The soundtrack is an absolute banger. I could not stop vibing throughout the entire game. There's only a handful of songs from what I can tell, but still, I want it and I need it. Tommy in the Monster Prison is a decently challenging game due to the monster and trap variety. While the controls leave a bit to be desired, especially in the boss fights, I still found myself having a pretty damn good time, amplified by the soundtrack that kept my head bobbing.